I stared at my phone screen and my heart stopped beating. The group chat showed 84/7 unread messages. I knew something terrible had happened because my hands were trembling as I started scrolling. Then I saw it. The screenshot of our bedroom, where Bennett was lying next to me, shirtless, my hand resting on his waist. My son Jasper, only 4 years old, had pressed send all while playing with my phone. Everything, my secret, our secret, was now exposed to my entire office. Fucking hell, I whispered, and dropped the phone. This was my office WhatsApp group, HR included. Bennett, who everyone knew as my business partner, was now exposed in a way I never wanted. I covered my face with my hands. This can't be real. This has to be just a nightmare. My phone buzzed again. It was a message from Bennett. Maverick, what's going on? People are calling me. I didn't reply because what could I say? How could I explain that our 2-year hidden relationship had just been revealed to everyone because of my son's innocent click? I walked into the living room where Jasper was playing with his toys, completely oblivious. His little face was smiling. He had no idea what he'd done. I couldn't be angry at him. He was just a child. But inside I was breaking apart. Dada home? Jasper asked, lifting his big blue eyes toward me. He called Bennett Dada, and I never corrected him because somewhere deep down, Bennett was what I never officially acknowledged. Yes, sweetheart. He'll be here soon, I said, keeping my voice steady. But inside my mind was racing. Bennett would be coming, and then we'd have to face whatever was coming next. There was a knock at the door. I knew it was Bennett. When I opened it, his eyes showed panic. The same panic that was probably in mine. Maverick, I saw the messages. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. Not at all. But I just let him inside because in this moment it was just the two of us and our son. The rest of the world now knew. And we had to figure out what to do next. The silence between us felt heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. Bennett stepped further into the apartment, and I closed the door behind him, leaning against it for support. My legs felt weak. Jasper looked up from his blocks and smiled at Bennett, completely unaware that his innocent mistake had just torn down the carefully constructed walls we'd built around our lives. Papa sad? Jasper asked, tilting his head. No, buddy, Papa's fine, I lied, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Bennett walked over and picked up Jasper, holding him close. Hey little man, how about you watch your cartoons while Papa and Dada talk? Jasper nodded eagerly and Bennett set him down on the couch, turning on his favorite show. Once Jasper was distracted, Bennett turned to me and the weight of reality crashed down between us. How bad is it? He asked quietly. I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. He scrolled through the messages, his expression growing darker with each swipe. I watched his jaw clench, his fingers tightening around my phone. Some messages were curious, mine were supportive, but others were cruel. Jokes about us, comments about Jasper, questions about our lifestyle. Thompson saw this, Bennett asked, referring to my boss. He must have. Everyone in the company group saw it. Bennett handed my phone back and ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his way of processing stress. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I've spent 3 years building my career there. 3 years keeping everything separate, professional. And now they know, Bennett finished. They know about us, about Jasper, about everything you've been hiding. The word hiding stung. Even though it was true, I had been hiding. We both had, but I was the one who insisted on it. Bennett had wanted to be open from the start, but I was terrified. Terrified of judgment, of losing my job, of the whispers and stares. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I'm sorry for dragging you into this secrecy, for making you pretend to be just my business partner when you're so much more than that. Bennett's expression softened. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Maverick, I chose this. I chose you. I knew what I was signing up for when we started this relationship, but now that it's out there, maybe it's not the disaster you think it is. How can you say that? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. My career could be over. People are already making jokes. What if they come after Jasper? What if... Bennett placed his hands on my shoulders, grounding me. Look at me. I did. His brown eyes were steady, calm in the storm. We'll handle this. Together. Whatever comes next, We face it as a family, not as your secret, not as something shameful, as who we really are. My throat tightened. I wanted to believe him, but fear was a powerful thing. It had controlled me for so long that the thought of letting it go felt impossible. What if I lose everything? I whispered. Then we'll build something new, Bennett said simply. But you won't lose me. You won't lose Jasper. Those are the things that actually matter, Maverick. I wanted to argue, to list all the practical reasons why my job and reputation mattered. But before I could, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Mr. Thompson. My stomach dropped. Bennett saw my expression and squeezed my shoulders. Do you want me to stay while you answer? I nodded, unable to speak. I swiped to answer and put the phone on speaker. Maverick, Mr. Thompson's voice came through. Formal and cold. I assume you've seen the group chat. Yes, sir, I managed to say. I think we need to have a conversation. Monday morning. My office. First thing. This situation needs to be addressed. I understand. Good. See you then. He hung up without waiting for a response. I lowered the phone, staring at it like it was a ticking bomb. Bennett pulled me into an embrace, and I let myself lean into him. Just for a moment. His heartbeat was steady against my ear, a reminder that even though everything felt like it was falling apart, he was still here. We have until Monday, I said into his chest. Then we use the time to prepare, Bennett replied. You're not going into that office alone. I'll be right there with you. I pulled back to look at him. You don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted firmly. You've faced everything alone for too long, Maverick. Not this time. For the first time since seeing that screenshot, I felt a small flicker of something that might have been hope. We stood in the living room, neither of us quite sure what to do next. Jasper was absorbed in his cartoons, his little legs swinging off the edge of the couch. Bennett removed his jacket and sat down, his hands immediately going to his hair in that familiar stressed gesture. The silence between us was thick and suffocating. Maverick, I got a call today, Bennett finally said, his voice low but tight. From your boss. He wanted clarification about our relationship. I closed my eyes. Mr. Thompson was a strict, conservative man. If he'd seen that screenshot, everything was finished. My job, our stability, all of. What did you tell him? I asked, my voice barely audible. I told him the truth, that I live with you, as your partner. Business and personal, Bennett answered. Meeting my eyes, there was that determination I'd first seen when we signed our arse deal together. I couldn't lie, Maverick. I would. My chest tightened. Bennett had always been like this, honest to a fault. While I had spent years hiding, compartmentalizing, keeping our worlds separate, we'd made private commitments to each other, but publicly, I'd always been too afraid. Society, people, judgment, I feared all of it. Bennett, do you understand how risky that is? I said, letting my frustration show. My job. Your job? He cut me off, his voice rising. Maverick, we've been together for 2 years. Jasper calls you Papa and me Dada. We're a and you're still talking about your job? I fell silent because he was right. I'd always put my career first, using my fear as a shield. But now that everything was exposed, I had no shield left. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message in the group from my colleague Derek. Congrats on coming out, Maverick. Didn't see that coming, lol. Loli. Like this was a joke. My hands clenched into fists. Bennett took my hand, his grip firm and grounding. Maverick, listen. We're going to face this. Together. But you can't run from me anymore. Not this time. I looked up at him. There was a seriousness in his eyes. A love I'd always felt but never fully accepted publicly. And in that moment I realized, Bennett wasn't just my business partner. He was everything. I'm not running, I whispered. I'm just scared. So am I, he admitted, his voice softening. But not alone. We're in this together, Maverick, and that's enough. He pressed his forehead against mine, and in that closeness, I started to feel safe again. Maybe we really could do this. Together. The rest of the weekend passed in a strange blur. Saturday morning, I made pancakes while Bennett helped Jasper with a puzzle. We tried to maintain some sense of normalcy. But every time my phone buzzed, my anxiety spiked. More messages kept coming. Some supportive, some curious, and some downright nasty. One message from a coworker I'd considered a friend read, "Always knew something was off about you, Maverick. Makes sense now. I showed it to Bennett, who read it and immediately took my phone, setting it face down on the counter. Stop reading them. They don't deserve your energy. But what if everyone thinks, who cares what they think? Bennett said, more forcefully than I'd expected. Maverick, you've spent 3 years proving yourself at that company. Your work speaks for itself. If they can't do that because of who you love, then they're the ones with the problem. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But years of conditioning, of hiding, of making myself smaller to fit in, it didn't just disappear overnight. Sunday evening, as we were putting Jasper to bed, he looked up at me with those innocent blue eyes and asked, Papa, why you and Dada look worried? I exchanged a glance with Bennett, unsure how to answer. How do you explain adult prejudice to a 4-year-old? Bennett knelt down beside the bed. Sometimes, buddy, grown-ups have to deal with complicated things. But you know what? No matter what happens, you, me, and Papa, we're always gonna be together. That's what matters most. Jasper seemed satisfied with that answer and snuggled into his blankets. Love you, Papa. Love you, Dada. Love you too, sweetheart, I said, kissing his forehead. After Jasper fell asleep, Bennett and I sat in the kitchen. He made tea, his go-to stress relief, and we sat across from each other at the small table. Tomorrow's the day, I said unnecessarily. Tomorrow's the day, Bennett echoed. And I meant what I said. I'm coming with you. Bennett, you don't have to put yourself through. Stop, he interrupted gently but firmly. Stop trying to protect me from this. We're partners, Maverick, in every sense of the word. That means standing together when things get hard. I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers intertwined with mine, warm and solid. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do, he said simply. You deserve someone who sees you, all of you, and loves every part. That's what I do, Maverick. That's what I've always done. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. I'm terrified of losing you. Of losing the— You won't, Bennett promised. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever Thompson says or does, we'll handle it. Because we're stronger together than apart. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing possible scenarios in my head. Would Thompson fire me on the spot? Would he give me some ultimatum? Would the whole office be staring when I walked in? Bennett must have sensed my restlessness, because around 3 in the morning, he pulled me closer in bed. Stop overthinking. How can I not? Because overthinking doesn't change anything. What happens tomorrow will happen. But right now you're here. I'm here. Jasper's safe in the next room. That's what's real, Maverick. Thus on that, I turned to face him in the darkness. When did you become so wise? Probably around the time I fell in love with an overthinker who needed someone to ground him. Bennett said with a small smile I could hear in his voice. I kissed him then, soft and lingering. Thank you. For everything. Always, he whispered back. Monday morning arrived too quickly. As we got ready, moving through our routine of getting Jasper ready for daycare and ourselves ready for work, there was an underlying tension. But there was also something else. A quiet determination. We were doing this together. Monday morning felt like walking toward an execution. I'd suggested Bennett stay home with Jasper, but he refused outright. I'm not letting you face this alone, he'd said with such finality that I knew Jewing was pointless. So we dropped Jasper at daycare. He waved goodbye happily, blissfully unaware of the storm we were walking into, and then drove to my office, Bennett in the passenger seat. As I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach churned with anxiety. I knew what waited inside. Stares, whispers, judgment. I parked and sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Ready? Bennett asked, placing his hand on my knee reassuringly. No, I answered honestly, but I have to do this anyway. We have to do this, Bennett corrected gently. We walked in together. The moment we entered the building, the receptionist's eyes landed on me, then shifted to Bennett, then quickly looked away. I headed straight for my cubicle, trying to ignore everyone, but I couldn't ignore the murmurs that followed us like shadows. That's him, with the guy. They actually came together? Bold move. I heard they have a kid too. Each word felt like needles under my skin. I sat at my desk and powered on my laptop, pretending everything was normal. Bennett stood beside me, arms crossed like a protective wall. He was deliberately making his presence known. Standing with me, and that gesture meant more than words could express. Derek approached my cubicle, his usual smirk plastered across his face. So Maverick, wild weekend, huh? Jasper's got some serious tech skills for a 4-year-old. I tried to ignore him, but Bennett stepped forward. Do you have a problem? His voice was low but carried an edge of danger. Derek raised his hands defensively. Chill, man. Just joking around. It's not funny, Bennett said firmly, and Derek walked away, clearly uncomfortable. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Thompson. Maverick, my office. Now, my stomach dropped. This was it. The moment that would determine my future, my career. I looked at Bennett, and whatever fear showed in my eyes made him immediately say, I'm coming with you. Bennett, you don't have to. I'm coming, he repeated, his eyes leaving no room for argument. We walked toward Mr. Thompson's office together. Every step felt heavy, weighted with dread, but Bennett's hand on my lower back, subtle but steady, gave me strength I desperately needed. Mr. Thompson's office felt suffocating. On his desk was a printout, the screenshot, clear as day. He gestured for us to sit, his expression unreadable. I sat down. My fingers interlocked so tightly my knuckles turned white. Bennett sat beside me, composed but alert. Maverick, Mr. Thompson began, his voice measured and clinical. I run this company professionally, and this. He gestured to the printout. This is not professional. My throat went dry. I wanted to defend myself, to say something, but the word stuck. Bennett spoke for me. Sir, with all due respect, that screenshot is from Maverick's personal life. It has nothing to do with his work performance. Mr. Thompson looked at Bennett, then back at me. Personal life? Maverick, you've been here for 3 years. You never mentioned having a partner, or a child. Because I didn't think it was relevant, I finally managed to say, my voice shaky. I've always performed my job well. My personal life has never interfered. But it's interfering now, Mr. Thompson said, his voice taking on a sharper edge. After that screenshot went around the group, clients have been calling, asking questions. Maverick, I'm not personally judging you, but from a business perspective, so what? You're going to fire him because he's gay? Bennett interrupted, his tone sharp. That's discrimination, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson's jaw tightened visibly. I'm not discriminating, I'm protecting the company's image. The company's image? I echoed, my own frustration finally surfacing. I've worked day and night for this company. I've won clients for you. I've delivered projects ahead of schedule. And man, because of one screenshot, all of that effort means nothing. Silence filled the room, thick and uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. Maverick, I'm not firing you immediately, but I strongly suggest you take some time off until this situation settles down. Time off is just a polite way of saying suspension, I said bitterly. It's space, he corrected, for you and for the company. I looked at Bennett. His eyes showed anger, but underneath it was something else. Resolve. He took my hand under the desk, a silent show of support that grounded me. Fine, I said finally, my voice cold and controlled. I'll take your time off. But this is discrimination, Mr. Thompson. And I won't forget it. We stood up and left his office. As we walked through the corridor, I glanced back at my cubicle one last time. 3 years of hard work, memories, achievements all questioned because of one screenshot. Bennett beansed my shoulder. Let's go, Maverick. You don't belong here anymore. We walked out of the building together. I could feel eyes on us, but I kept my head up. When we reached the car, I got in and just sat there, my hands on the steering wheel, unable to move. Maverick, Bennett said my name softly, his hand on my shoulder. I lost everything, I whispered, my voice breaking. My job, my reputation, everything. You didn't lose me, Bennett said firmly. He turned my face toward him, making me look at him. And you didn't lose Jasper. We're still here, Maverick. We're not going anywhere. But what do we do now? I asked, feeling lost. Now we go pick up our son, Bennett said simply. We go home. We figure this out together, like we always do. One step at a time. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Bennett leaned over and kissed my forehead, a gentle reminder that I wasn't alone in this. As I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror at the building that had been such a huge part of my life. Part of me felt like I was leaving behind my mate. But another part, a smaller, quieter part felt something else. Relief. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't have to hide. The secret was out. And while the consequences were terrifying, there was a strange freedom in no longer carrying that weight. Bennett's hand found mine as I drove. "We're going to be okay," he said with such certainty that I almost believed him. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because we have each other. And that's always been enough." I squeezed his hand, holding on to that promise as we drove toward home. Toward Jasper, toward whatever uncertain future awaited us. Together. After leaving the office, we drove in silence to pick up Jasper from daycare. The weight of what had just happened hung between us like a thick fog. When we pulled into the daycare parking lot, I sat there for a moment, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. "We need to get Jasper," Bennett said gently, placing his hand over mine. I nodded and got out of the car, forcing myself to put on a normal face. When Jasper saw us, he ran over with his usual enthusiasm, his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. "Papa! Dada!" he shouted, throwing his arms around my legs. I picked him up, holding him perhaps a bit tighter than necessary. His warmth, his innocent joy. It reminded me what actually mattered. Bennett grabbed Jasper's backpack and we headed back to the car. Once Jasper was buckled into his car seat, he immediately noticed something was wrong. "Papa sad?" he asked in his small voice, his blue eyes wide with concern. "No, sweetheart. Papa's okay," I lied, forcing a smile that felt unnatural. But Jasper was perceptive for his age. He reached forward and grabbed both my hand and Bennett's. "Papa, Dada!" Hug. Right there in the parking lot, the three of us shared a group hug through the gap between the front seats. Jasper's innocence temporarily pulled me out of my spiral of despair. This little person, this perfect little human, he was what truly mattered. Jabs could come and go, but this family, this was permanent. When we got home, I helped Jasper settle in with his building blocks in the living room while Bennett disappeared into the kitchen. I could hear the kettle being filled. His usual stress response was making tea. I joined him, leaning against the counter and watching him move through the familiar motions. "Bennett, can we actually handle this?" I asked, doubt creeping into my voice. "Yes," he answered without hesitation, turning on the kettle. "I have some savings put away, and I can take on more freelance projects. Maverick will manage. I don't want to be a burden on you," I said, my voice cracking slightly. Bennett set the kettle down and turned to face me, his eyes intense and focused. "You're not a burden. You never have been, and you never will be. You're my partner, Maverick, in every sense of that word. And partners share everything, happiness and problems alike." I looked into his eyes, and in that moment, I realized how fortunate I was. My job was gone, my reputation damaged, but Bennett was still here, solid and unwavering. "I love you so much," I said, more openly and vulnerably than I'd ever allowed myself before. His eyes softened and a small smile appeared on his lips. "I love you too, Maverick. I always have, and I always will." We kissed in the kitchen, gentle and reassuring, like we were making a promise to each other that we'd get through this together. From the living room, Jasper shouted, "Ayo!" and we both laughed, the first genuine laugh of that heavy day. That evening after we put Jasper to bed, Bennett and I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open between us. He pulled up my resume and started updating it, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. "Look at your skills, Maverick. Data analysis, project management, client relations. You're highly qualified. Any company would be lucky to have you." I started scrolling through job portals while Bennett stayed by my side, offering suggestions and pointing out opportunities I might have overlooked. "Check out this company," he said, sharing a link. "They're explicitly LGBTQ friendly. They mention their diversity policies right in their mission statement. It's an inclusive workplace." I clicked on the link and read through the description. The company had a solid reputation, excellent benefits, and most importantly, their values aligned with mine. My chest felt a bit lighter. Maybe this could be a fresh start. "Let's apply," I said, a small smile forming on my lips. The first real smile of the day. "Absolutely," Bennett agreed, squeezing my hand across the table. "We'll do this, Maverick, together, just like we always have." For the first time since the entire chaos began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Real, tangible hope. The next few days were a blur of activity. Bennett helped me tailor my resume for different positions, and we practiced interview questions together. He was relentless in his support, never once making me feel like my unemployment was a L. Instead, he treated it like a temporary setback that we'd overcome as a team. On Wednesday evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Jasper asked a question that caught me off guard. "Papa, why you not go to work anymore?" I exchanged a glance with Bennett, unsure how to answer. We'd been trying to keep everything as normal as possible for Jasper, but clearly he'd noticed the change in routine. "Papa's taking a little break," Bennett said smoothly, kneeling down to Jasper's level. "Sometimes grown-ups need breaks to find even better jobs." "Better than before?" Jasper asked, his eyes lighting up. "Much better," I confirmed, ruffling his hair. "Papa's going to find a job where everyone is nice and fair." Jasper seemed satisfied with this explanation and went back to playing with his toy cars. Bennett and I shared a look that said we'd have to be more careful about maintaining normalcy for our son's sake. That night, after Jasper was asleep, I found myself standing in our bedroom, looking at the spot where that fateful screenshot had been taken. Bennett came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how one moment changed everything," I replied. "One accidental click and our whole world turned upside down." "Maybe it needed to be turned upside down," Bennett suggested. "We were living in two separate worlds. Maverick, the real one here at home, and the fake one you maintained at work. That's exhausting. Maybe Jasper accidentally freed us from that exhaustion." I turned in his arms to face him. "You really believe that?" "I do," he said firmly. "I believe we're going to come out of this stronger, more authentic, more us." I wanted to believe him. I really did. And standing there in his arms in the safety of our bedroom, it felt possible. The following day, I received an email notification on my phone. My heart raced as I opened it. It was a response from one of the companies I'd applied to, requesting an interview. I immediately showed Bennett, who pulled me into a tight embrace. "See? It's already happening," he said, his voice full of pride. The interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Giving me several days to prepare, Bennett helped me research the company, practice answers to potential questions, and even picked out what I should wear. His attention to detail and unwavering support made me fall in love with him all over again. On the day of the interview, Bennett insisted on driving me there. As we pulled up to the building, he leaned over and kissed me. "You're going to be amazing," he said with complete confidence. "How do you know?" I asked, my nerves starting to show. "Because you're brilliant, hardworking and authentic. And this company values those things. Now go show them what they'd be getting." I walked into that interview with my head held high. The interviewers were warm and professional, asking about my experience and skills without a single uncomfortable question about my personal life. When I left an hour later, I felt genuinely good about how it had gone. Bennett was waiting in the parking lot, and the moment I got in the car, he asked, "How did it go?" "Really well," I said, surprised by my own optimism. They seemed genuinely interested in my experience, and they asked substantive questions about how I'd approach various scenarios. It felt respectful. "That's because it was," Bennett said, starting the car. "That's how it should always feel." As we drove home, I realized something important. This entire experience, as painful and scary as it had been, was teaching me that I deserved to work somewhere that valued all of me, not just the carefully curated professional version I'd been presenting for years. When we picked up Jasper from daycare that afternoon, he asked how Papa's day was, and for the first time in weeks I could honestly say, "It was good, buddy. Really good." That night, as the three of us sat together watching Jasper's favorite cartoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. And that made all the difference. 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of routine and uncertainty. I'd applied to 3 different companies, each one carefully researched and selected based on their inclusive workplace policies. Bennett sat with me every evening, helping me prepare for potential interviews and reminding me of my worth whenever doubt crept in. Jasper, in his innocent way, became our cheerleader, often shouting, "Papa's gonna win" at random moments throughout the day. His positivity became our energy source, a bright light in an otherwise uncertain time. It was a Thursday morning when everything shifted. I was making breakfast for Jasper while Bennett worked on his laptop at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed with an email notification and I almost ignored it, expecting another automated rejection. but something made me The subject line read, "Job offer, senior analyst position." My heart stopped. I set down the spatula and opened the email with trembling fingers. It was from the company Bennett had pointed out weeks ago, the one that explicitly valued LGBTQ employees and promoted an inclusive workplace. As I read through the details, my eyes widened. The offer was better than my previous position: higher salary, comprehensive benefits, clear growth opportunities, and a work culture that actually aligned with my values. "Bennett," I called out, unable to contain my excitement. He looked up from his laptop, eyebrow raised. "What happened?" "I got an offer," I said, turning the phone screen toward him. His eyes went wide, and then the biggest smile I'd seen in weeks spread across his face. He immediately stood up and pulled me into a tight hug, actually lifting me slightly off the ground. "I knew you'd. I told you someone would recognize your value." Jasper, hearing the commotion, ran over from where he'd been playing. "Papa happy. Dada happy. Jasper happy too." The three of us stood in the kitchen in a chaotic, beautiful group embrace, laughter mixing with relief and pure joy. In that moment, the screenshot, the whispers, the judgment, all of it faded into background noise. Because here, in this house, we were safe. We were accepted. We were loved. Bennett picked up Jasper and looked at me over our son's shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Maverick. So incredibly proud. I couldn't have done this without you," I admitted, emotion making my voice thick. "You kept me grounded when I wanted to fall apart. You reminded me I was strong when I felt weak." "And you," Bennett replied softly, his eyes locked on mine despite Jasper wiggling between us. "You make me feel complete. You always have." That evening, after Jasper was tucked into bed, I sat down to carefully compose my acceptance email. Bennett brought over 2 glasses of wine and sat beside me, reading over my shoulder as I typed. When I finished, I hovered over the send button for just a moment before clicking it. "Done," I said, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "How does it feel?" Bennett asked. "It feels like closure," I said honestly, "and like a new beginning." Then I opened a new email and began composing my resignation to Mr. Thompson. I kept it professional and gracious, thanking him for the opportunities I'd had over the past 3 years. But I also made sure to include a subtle acknowledgement that the way my personal situation had been handled was disappointing. I wasn't angry anymore, just honest. Bennett read it over and nodded approvingly. Perfect balance of professional and truthful. I sent that email too and then closed my laptop. Bennett refilled our wine glasses and we sat in comfortable silence for a while, both processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "You know what the funny part is?" I said eventually. "I spent 3 years at that company trying to be the perfect employee, never causing problems, never drawing attention to myself, always putting work first. And in the end it didn't matter. One screenshot and all of that careful construction collapsed." "'Cause it was built on hiding," Bennett observed gently. "You can't build something lasting on a foundation of secrecy and fear. This new job, it's different. You're going in as your complete self. No hiding, no pretending. Just you." "Just me," I repeated, testing how that felt. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and celebration. Bennett insisted we do something special as a family, so we took Jasper to his favorite park and then out for ice cream. Watching my son's face light up as he devoured his chocolate cone, I felt a surge of gratitude for this simple, perfect moment. On Sunday night, as I was going through my work clothes to decide what to wear on my first day, Bennett came into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. "Nervous about Monday?" he asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "What if it's not as inclusive as they claim? What if people still judge me? What if—" Bennett cut me off by taking my hands in his. "Maverick, listen to me. You've already survived the worst-case scenario. You lost your job, faced discrimination, and came out the other side. Nothing this new company throws at you can be worse than what you've already overcome." He was right. I'd already faced my biggest fear and survived it. Whatever came next I could handle. Monday morning arrived with surprising speed. As I got dressed in my carefully selected outfit, I could hear Bennett in the kitchen making breakfast while Jasper chattered away about his dreams. The normalcy of it steadied my nerves. When it was time to leave, both Bennett and Jasper insisted on driving me to my new office. Jasper gave me a crushing hug that nearly knocked the wind out of me. "Papa's gonna rock it," he declared with absolute certainty. Bennett's encouragement was quieter but no less powerful. He looked at me with such pride in his eyes that it made my chest tight. "You're going to be amazing," he said simply. "We're going to be amazing," I corrected, because this wasn't just my journey, it was ours. Every step forward we took together. As I walked into the new office building, I was greeted by genuinely warm smiles. My new supervisor, a woman named Patricia, gave me a comprehensive tour and introduced me to the team. Nobody stared. Nobody whispered. Nobody whispered. Nobody made me feel like my personal life was something shameful or scandalous. During the orientation, Patricia mentioned the company's employee resource group for LGBTQ staff and their families. "We have monthly meetings and social events," she explained. "You and your partner would be welcome to attend if you're interested." "Thank you," I said, meaning it deeply. "That sounds wonderful." At lunch, several colleagues invited me to join them in the cafeteria. The conversation was easy and inclusive, touching on weekend plans, favorite restaurants, and work projects. When one colleague mentioned his husband, nobody batted an eye. It was simply normal. As I drove home that evening, I called Bennett to tell him about my day. "It was incredible," I said, unable to keep the smile out of my voice. "People were genuinely welcoming. I didn't have to hide or pretend or carefully edit my words. I could just be myself." "That's how it should always be," Bennett replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice too. "I'm so happy for you, Maverick." For us. When I got home, Jasper ran to greet me at the door, and Bennett was right behind him. I scooped up my son and pulled my partner close, the three of us standing in the entryway in a tight embrace. "We did it," I whispered into Bennett's shoulder. "We did," he agreed. "And this is just the beginning." 3 months into my new position, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both foreign and wonderful. I no longer woke up with anxiety knotting my stomach. I no longer carefully rehearsed conversations to avoid mentioning Bennett or Jasper. I no longer carried the exhausting weight of maintaining two separate versions of myself. At work, I'd become part of the lgbtq employee resource group that Patricia had mentioned during orientation. It met the first Thursday of every month, and Bennett had started joining me for the social events. Watching him laugh and chat with my colleagues, not as my secret partner but as my openly acknowledged other half, filled me with a contentedness I'd never experienced at my previous job. One particular evening stood out. The resource group was hosting a family picnic in a local park, and we'd brought Jasper along. He played on the playground equipment with other employees' children, while Bennett and I sat on a blanket with several of my coworkers. "Your son is adorable," said Marcus, one of the senior developers who'd become a good friend. His husband, David, nodded in agreement. "He takes after his dada," I said, gesturing to Bennett, who rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "Please, he has your stubborn streak," Bennett countered. And everyone laughed. The ease of that moment struck me. I was sitting in the sunshine with my partner and child, surrounded by colleagues who knew and accepted all of me. 6 months ago, this would have been unimaginable. Later that evening, as we drove home with Jasper dozing in his car seat, Bennett reached over and squeezed my hand. "You look happy," he observed. "I am," I replied, surprised by how deeply I meant it. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending on hiding until I stopped having to do it. "It's like I've been holding my breath for 3 years and can finally exhale." "That's exactly what it was," Bennett agreed. "And watching you breathe freely, it's beautiful, Maverick." When we got home and put Jasper to bed, I found myself standing in our bedroom doorway, looking at the room where that fateful screenshot had been taken. But now, instead of shame or regret, I felt something else entirely. "You know what's strange?" I said as Bennett came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I'm actually grateful for what happened." "Really?" Bennett sounded surprised. "Really?" I confirmed. That screenshot, as terrifying as it was at the time, it forced me to stop hiding. It forced me to choose between living authentically or continuing to compartmentalize my life. And even though the choice was made for me in some ways, the outcome, it's been better than I ever imagined. Bennett rested his chin on my shoulder. "I'm glad you feel that way. But I also want you to know that your feelings during that time were completely valid. You were scared and you had every right to be. The fact that things worked out doesn't erase how difficult it was." I turned in his arms to face him. How did I get so lucky to find you? I ask myself the same question every day, he replied with a soft smile. We stood there for a moment, just holding each other before I spoke again. I've been thinking about something, I said slowly, about making things more official. Between us. Bennett pulled back slightly to look at me, his eyes searching mine. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time we actually got married. Made this legal, not just emotional. Bennett's breath caught. Maverick, are you proposing? Not officially, I said quickly, then laughed at myself. Actually, yes. Yes, I am. Bennett, will you marry me? Will you let me stand up in front of everyone we know and publicly commit to you the way I should have done from the beginning? For a moment, Bennett just stared at me, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Then he nodded, a brilliant smile breaking across his face. Yes, he said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. We kissed, and it felt different from any kiss we'd shared before. It felt like a promise, like a new chapter beginning, like everything we'd been through had led us to this exact moment. The next morning, we told Jasper over breakfast. He was 4 and didn't fully understand marriage, but he understood celebration. Papa and Dada getting married, he shouted, bouncing in his chair. Can I wear a fancy suit? The fanciest, Bennett promised, ruffling his hair. Over the following weeks, we started planning a simple ceremony. Nothing extravagant, just close friends, the few family members, and a celebration of the love we'd been nurturing for years. My new colleagues from work were invited, and their enthusiastic responses only reinforced how different this chapter of my life truly was. One afternoon, as Bennett and I were addressing invitations at the kitchen table, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made me answer it. Maverick? This is Sarah from HR at Thompson & Associates. My stomach tightened at the mention of my old company. Yes, I wanted to reach out personally, Sarah continued, her voice warm. Several things have changed here since you left. There's been a company-wide review of our discrimination policies, and, well, I wanted you to know that Mr. Thompson is no longer with the company. The board found that his handling of your situation violated corporate policy. I sat there stunned. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Sarah replied. I just thought you deserved to know. And if you're ever interested in returning, we'd welcome the conversation. After I hung up, I told Bennett what had happened. He looked thoughtful. How do you feel about it? He asked. Honestly, relieved that they recognized the problem but not interested in going back. I'm happy where I am now. I'm happy being open about who I am. Good, Bennett said, smiling. Because that's exactly how you should feel. The day of our wedding arrived faster than expected. It was a small ceremony in a garden venue, with Jasper serving as our ring bearer. As I stood at the altar watching Bennett walk toward me, I thought about everything that had led us to this moment. The fear, the hiding, the accidental exposure, the loss, the rebuilding, and finally the freedom. When it was time for vows, I looked into Bennett's eyes and spoke from my heart. For years, I thought loving you meant hiding you, protecting our relationship by keeping it separate from the rest of my life. But I was wrong. Real love isn't something you hide. It's something you celebrate. It's something you shout from the rooftops. Bennett, you taught me that being authentic is more important than being comfortable. That living openly is more valuable than living carefully. I promise to never hide us again. I promise to stand beside you, proudly and publicly, for the rest of our lives. Bennett's vows were equally moving, and by the time we exchanged rings, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. As we kissed as married partners for the first time, I heard Jasper shout, "Yay! Papa and Dada married now." The reception was filled with laughter, dancing, and joy. My colleagues from my new job mingled easily with our friends and family. There were no secrets, no careful word choices, no anxiety about who knew what. Just celebration. Late in the evening, as Bennett and I swayed together on the dance floor, he whispered in my ear, "Any regrets?" "Not a single one," I replied honestly. "This us, openly and proudly. This is everything I never knew I needed." "Me too," Bennett agreed, pulling me closer. Looking around at our wedding reception, at Jasper dancing with reckless abandon, at our friends and colleagues celebrating our love, I realized something profound. That screenshot, the one that had felt like the end of everything, had actually been the beginning of something far better. It had freed us from hiding, from fear, from living half a life. We were no longer hidden. We were fully, beautifully, authentically ourselves. And that was worth everything.